welcome to today's deep dive.
Yeah.
We're going to be looking at something pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Indigenous knowledge, and specifically, we're going to be focusing on chapter 1 of this book called Indigenous Wisdom for Sustainable Futures.
Oh, very cool.
It's all about...
It's fascinating.
Yeah. Really laying the groundwork for understanding these unique systems of knowledge.
Absolutely.
And how they work. And it's amazing to think that these traditions have been shaping landscapes.
It is.
And ensuring sustainability for like millennia.
Yeah.
Imagine what we can learn from them for our own future.
It's mind-blowing when you think about it.
Yeah.
What makes indigenous knowledge systems so fascinating is that they're not just static collections of facts.
Right.
They're dynamic and holistic frameworks that have evolved over generations of direct interaction with the environment.
Like a living library, right? Not just written down somewhere, but woven into the very fabric of these communities. I was reading about how indigenous knowledge often combines ecological, spiritual, social, and economic dimensions.
Right.
It creates a much more interconnected view than what we're used to in Western science, which tends to compartmentalize everything.
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
Western science often seeks to isolate and analyze specific elements, while indigenous knowledge emphasizes the relationships and interconnectedness between all things.
So for someone coming to this for the first time, could you give us an example of that interconnectedness in action?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One striking example is the practice of cultural burning used by Aboriginal Australians for over 60,000 years.
Wow.
They have used carefully controlled burns to manage the landscape.
Okay, so it's not just about putting out fires.
Right.
It's about using fire as a tool to manage the land.
Exactly. The burns promote biodiversity by encouraging the growth of certain plants. And they even help to prevent larger, more destructive wildfires in the long run.
So they're being proactive.
Exactly. This practice is deeply intertwined with their cultural and spiritual beliefs.
Right.
Highlighting that interconnectedness we were talking about.
It's almost like a conversation with the land, isn't it?
That's a great way to put it.
They're not just managing the land, they're participating in a relationship with it.
And it's important to remember that this knowledge isn't something that should just be freely taken or appropriated.
Right.
Chapter 1 really emphasizes the importance of ethical considerations when engaging with indigenous knowledge.
You know, that's something that really struck me as I was reading the chapter.
Yeah.
There's a sense of responsibility.
Absolutely.
That comes with accessing this knowledge. It's not just information to be extracted, but a way of life that needs to be respected.
Precisely. This knowledge is deeply tied to cultural identity.
Yeah. And often has specific protocols around its use and sharing. For example, certain ceremonies or practices might be restricted to certain members of the community or require specific permissions before they can be shared with outsiders.
So how do we as outsiders approach this knowledge in a way that's respectful and ethical?
Chapter 1 emphasizes the importance of collaborative approaches. It's not about going into a community and saying, tell us your secrets. It's about building genuine partnerships based on mutual respect, trust, and a shared desire to learn and protect this valuable knowledge.
So it's about listening, not just taking.
Exactly.
And recognizing that indigenous communities are not just stakeholders in these projects, but the rightful holders of this knowledge.
Exactly. And those partnerships should be built on a foundation of respect for indigenous rights and protocols. It's about ensuring that indigenous communities have control over how their knowledge is shared and used.
And that they benefit from any applications or discoveries that stem from it.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about empowering communities rather than exploiting them.
Exactly. Yeah, it's about shifting those power dynamics and making sure that indigenous communities have a voice. You know, and this isn't just about fairness. It's also about recognizing the immense value of this knowledge.
That's something that really stood out to me in chapter 1. The authors talk about indigenous knowledge not just as a collection of facts, but as a way of seeing and understanding the world.
Exactly.
It's a perspective that's rooted in a deep connection to the environment and a sense of responsibility for its well-being.
I completely agree. Take, for example, the concept of cultural landscapes.
No.
These are areas that have been actively managed by Indigenous communities.
Right. And it's not just about managing these landscapes for their own benefit.
Right.
It's about understanding the interconnectedness of everything and working to maintain the health and balance of the entire ecosystem.
Exactly. It's a much more holistic view than simply extracting resources or maximizing yields.
Right.
These cultural landscapes are living examples of how Indigenous knowledge can be applied to create sustainable and resilient environments.
It's like they've been practicing sustainability for centuries.
Exactly.
And we're just now catching up.
Right.
But it's not always easy to bridge the gap between these different ways of knowing.
It can be challenging, for sure.
Right.
One of the key takeaways from Chapter 1 is the importance of building trust and understanding between Indigenous communities and researchers, or anyone seeking to learn from their knowledge. It requires patience, humility, and a willingness to let go of our preconceived notions.
It sounds like it's a lot more than just learning a new technique or two.
Right.
It's about shifting our mindset and our worldview.
You've hit the nail on the head. And that's where the ethical considerations become so important.
Right.
It's not enough to just admire the ingenuity of Indigenous knowledge.
Right.
We have a responsibility to ensure that we engage with it in a way that respects the rights of Indigenous communities and contributes to their well-being.
It's about moving away from that colonial mentality of extraction.
Exactly.
And towards a more collaborative and equitable approach to knowledge sharing.
Absolutely. And that's why Chapter 1 emphasizes the importance of understanding and respecting Indigenous rights and protocols.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that this knowledge isn't just free for the taking.
Right.
It's a living heritage that needs to be protected and valued.
This all makes me think about the potential applications of Indigenous knowledge.
Yeah.
In addressing some of the big challenges we face today, like climate change and biodiversity loss.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Indigenous knowledge systems offer a wealth of experience and insights into how to live sustainably on this planet. Practices like cultural burning, for example, have a huge potential for managing wildfires and promoting biodiversity.
And the Three Sisters planting technique, which we talked about earlier, shows how Indigenous agriculture can be incredibly efficient and sustainable.
Exactly.
It's not just about producing food. It's about creating a self-sustaining ecosystem.
Right. These are just a few examples of how Indigenous knowledge can provide practical solutions to contemporary problems. But it goes beyond just the practical applications.
Okay.
It's also about challenging our assumptions and expanding our understanding of what sustainability really means.
It's like Chapter 1 is inviting us to see the world through a different lens.
Exactly.
To recognize the value of a worldview that's been marginalized for far too long.
Precisely. It's about acknowledging the wisdom that comes from living in close relationship with the land for generations. And it's about realizing that we have much to learn from Indigenous communities if we're willing to listen with open hearts and minds.
Yeah, it's like we've been looking at sustainability through a very narrow lens, and Chapter 1 is encouraging us to widen our perspective.
And this shift in perspective isn't just about abstract ideas.
Right.
It has the potential to lead to real-world solutions. Especially when it comes to some of the pressing environmental challenges we face today.
That's what I find so exciting about this whole topic. It's not just about preserving the past.
Right.
It's about using this ancient wisdom to shape a more sustainable future.
Absolutely.
What kind of impact could this knowledge have, say, on how we address climate change?
Well, for one, Indigenous communities have been adapting to environmental changes. For millennia, they hold a vast body of knowledge about how to live in balance with nature, even in the face of shifting climates.
And unpredictable weather patterns.
So it's not just about theoretical solutions. It's about practical lived experience that has been tested and refined over generations.
Precisely. And that experience can inform our approaches to everything from managing forests and water resources to developing sustainable agriculture and adapting to rising sea levels.
I'm thinking about the example of the Pacific Islander communities and their traditional navigation techniques, relying on their deep understanding of stars, currents, and weather patterns.
Absolutely.
That knowledge could be incredibly valuable in predicting and adapting to changes in ocean currents and weather systems brought about by climate change.
It's a perfect example of how Indigenous knowledge can provide both historical context and practical solutions for contemporary challenges. And it's not just about specific techniques. It's about the underlying values and principles that guide those practices.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
What are some of those key principles that stand out to you?
Well, one that really resonates with me is the emphasis on interconnectedness.
Okay.
Indigenous knowledge systems recognize the interconnectedness of all living things and the importance of maintaining balance within ecosystems.
Right.
This understanding can be crucial in developing sustainable solutions that consider the long-term impacts on the environment and all its inhabitants.
It's about thinking beyond short-term gains and considering the well-being of the entire web of life, both present and future generations.
And that brings us to another key principle.
Okay.
Reciprocity.
Okay.
Indigenous cultures often emphasize the importance of giving back to the land and recognizing the gifts that nature provides.
Right.
This idea of reciprocity can be incredibly powerful in shaping our relationship with the environment and encouraging us to act as stewards rather than exploiters.
So it's about shifting from a mindset of taking to a mindset of giving back and acknowledging our responsibility to care for the earth.
Exactly. These principles, when applied thoughtfully, can be incredibly powerful in shaping a more sustainable future. And it's not about romanticizing Indigenous cultures or suggesting they have all the answers. It's about recognizing the value of their perspectives and experiences and learning from them with humility and respect.
If there's one thing I hope our listeners take away from this deep dive, it's that Indigenous knowledge isn't just something to be studied or admired from afar. It's a living, breathing system of knowledge. That has the potential to help us navigate the challenges of the 21st century.
I couldn't agree more. It's a call to action. An invitation to engage with this knowledge in a way that's respectful, reciprocal, and ultimately beneficial for both Indigenous communities and the planet as a whole.
It's been an eye-opening journey exploring this topic with you.
It has been a pleasure.
I feel like we've only just scratched the surface. But hopefully, this deep dive has given our listener a taste of the incredible depth and relevance of Indigenous knowledge.
It has been a pleasure diving in with you as well.
And to our listener, thank you for joining us on this journey. We encourage you to continue exploring the world of Indigenous knowledge and to seek out opportunities to learn from and support the communities who are the keepers of this invaluable wisdom.